Asmat Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Paramagurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Sarvagurubhyo Namaha. So today we wanted to have a little bit of a discussion about deity worship and some of the basic principles. And we also had some specific questions about deities after they're installed, and perhaps renovation of deities, reinstallation of deities, moving of deities, what happens and what the Shastra has to say about them. So first of all, I want to make sure that we understand a little bit about the basic doctrines and practices of deity worship. And in different Vaishnava sampradayas, deity worship is mostly following agamas or tantras. Specifically for Vaishnavas, it's Vaishnava agamas, Pancharatra agama, or Vaikanasa agama. We're mainly interested in Pancharatra agama and derivative literature that comes from the Pancharatra agama for different sampradayas. Each of the Vaishnava sampradayas, acharyas, have written derivative literature for their followers to follow, summarizing the Pancharatra agamas, which are, of course, a huge thing. I would, first of all, let's look at the Bhagavatam. There's a couple of things that I wanted to look at. First, for Gaudiya Vaishnavas, Haribhakti Vilas is the Vaishnava Smriti, is the Shastra that they usually look at for answering any questions that they have on the details. Maybe not the principles and the. It also has explanation of the principles and the doctrines of deity worship, but the details of Anusthanam or Vaishnava ritualism for Gaudiyas, Haribhakti Vilas is usually the text that people look at. And also we have the Bhagavatam, which of course is a very important text for everybody, but also especially for Gaudiya Vaishnava. So I thought I would look at the Bhagavatam. In the 11th canto, 27th chapter, we have a section called Lord Krishna's Instructions on Deity Worship. So just quickly to have a look through some of that, I'll just share the screen. Now I have so in the beginning of the chapter, Uddhava is asking, this part of the Bhagavatam, Uddhava is asking Lord Krishna for different questions about different things. So don't mind if I hear some background noise. I'll mute anybody that's there. But you can always at any time, you can unmute if you want to stop or you want to ask a question at any time. So if we go here, let's see. So Uddhava is asking Krishna specifically in the 27th chapter of the Bhagavatam about deity worship. So the first thing that Krishna says to him is in the 6th text. He says, "My dear Uddhava, there's no end to the innumerable Vedic prescriptions for executing deity worship. So I shall try to explain the topic to you briefly, one step at a time." So that's what we want. We want a summary. We want something brief to give us an overview of deity worship. And so that's what Krishna's going to do. In the 7th text, he explains what I had just said, that there is different types of deity worship, and that the worship of the deity, we're talking specifically of worship of Lord Vishnu, of Krishna, Vaishnava worship. And he says, one should carefully worship me according to selecting one of 3 methods: Vedic, Tantric, or mixed. Now, Vedic would mean using a lot of Vedic mantras, and that would probably be what we call the Vaikanasa system. We're not really interested in that system because most Vaishnavas follow the Pancharatric system. So we won't really discuss about Vaikanasa agama today. Tantric is another word for agamic. Tantric, agamic, there's a body of literature for each, the followers of each particular deity. And for Vaishnavas, there is a Vaishnava agamas. There are 2 Vaikanasa and Pancharatra. So again, we're talking about the Pancharatra agamas. And then mixed. Mixed would mean simply that we're offering worship of the Lord, and it has some tantric or some agamic elements, which are non-Vedic elements, and it has some Vedic elements, which there might be some mantras which we've heard of, Vedic mantras like Purusha Suktam or different Vedic mantras that are used. And this is the type of worship that is described in Hari Bhakti Vilas. Because you will find in Hari Bhakti Vilas, you'll find Vedic mantras, and you'll find classical Sanskrit mantras. And there's a little bit of difference between the two. If you don't know what the difference is, that's another whole discussion. Okay, so now we're talking about, if we go to 8, verse 8, if we go to verse 8, and also if anybody has any questions and you don't want to unmute and just ask them during the discussion, and we'll have more discussion at the end here. They can just type in the chat also. I can watch the chat. Okay, so moving on to text number 8, Krishna says, "Please now listen faithfully. I shall explain exactly how a person who has achieved twice-born status through the relevant Vedic prescriptions should worship me with devotion." There's an interesting point. Krishna is saying that before one performs this type of worship, there might be other forms of worship of Krishna, like chanting the holy names, where there are smaranena kalaha. Lord Chaitanya says smaranena kalaha, that in remembering the Lord's names, there are no particular rules and regulations. Whereas in the process of deity worship, there are lots of rules and regulations. Now, of course, there's different forms of deity worship. There can also be different forms of deity worship according to the adhikari, according to the qualifications of the person performing the worship. If a person is completely transcendental, is completely realized, what we call maybe perhaps a pure devotee, like that, he might be performing what we call raganuga sadhana bhakti, and he might be doing some things which don't correspond to the particular rules and regulations. So first of all, we have to understand that God is everywhere. According to Vedanta and according to Vaishnavism, that Lord Vishnu, the word Vishati in Sanskrit means to enter. So Lord Vishnu is everywhere. He is everywhere. He's all pervasive. Krishna is everywhere. He's all pervasive. He's within every atom. He's within your heart. He's everywhere. So when we talk about deity worship, why should we worship God? Why should we worship God in a particular place when he's everywhere? We can just worship him anywhere. But the fact is that there are different ways to worship God, and the system of worshiping God called Pancharatra, or the agamic systems like that, specifically deal with different forms of God, which are mentioned in the Pancharatra. Usually Pancharatra has a lot of 5 things in it. So it also has 5 forms of God, which it talks about: Karnika, Vyuha, Vibhava, Antaryaman, and Archa. These are the 5 forms. So we've discussed this before. Karnika means the original personality of Godhead. He's transcendental into this material world. He's in his own abode. And then from him, there are different emanations. So from the original God, form of Godhead, there are emanations. From that Karnika. Karnika, by the way, in Sanskrit means, if anybody wants to know what a Sanskrit word is, just put it in the chat or just ask. We have a Sanskrit dictionary online. We can just immediately know what a word means. But we shouldn't get too much bound up in different terminology. If there's terminology that people don't understand, just ask and we'll explain the terminology. So Karnika, strictly speaking, means the whorl of a flower, or the inside of a flower where the stamens are, the very middle of a flower. So if we think of the whole of creation as being like a flower, the very essence of the middle of it is called Karnika. So that would be God's abode, God's original abode. He's there, and that is the original form of God from which everything emanates, as is stated in the Brahma Sutras, Janmadhyasya Yataha, that from which everything emanates. So of course, those sort of definitions are given in the Upanishads, Yato va imani bhutani jayante, etc. In Taittiriya Upanishad, that from which everything emanates, that by which everything is maintained, and that into which everything emanates, that is the supreme. So, and we also know from Narayana Upanishad, Narayana Brahmo Jayate, Narayana Indro Jayate, Narayana Prajapate Prajayante, before all these other personalities before the whole material creation. There was the Supreme Lord Krishna, Narayana, whatever name you want to give him. So that is Karnika. Karnika, then from Vyuha, everybody should should understand about Vyuha is that there are 4 emanations from the original personality. They are called Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Especially in the Pancharatra literature, they're described, and I won't go into all the details of them, but the word Bhagavan means that there are 6 major qualities, although he has unlimited Ananta Kalyana Gunas, he has unlimited auspicious qualities, but they're categorized in basically 6, Jnana, Shakti, Virya, Tejas, Bala, and Aishwarya, and therefore Bhagavan means a person who has all those to unlimited degree, and so each one of these Vyuhas has them to unlimited degree. They're expansions from the original personality of Godhead, but each one perhaps shows primarily 2 of them. It's like Vasudeva shows all 6, and then Sankarshana, Pradyumna, Aniruddha show 2, 2, 2, like that primarily. And then from those Vyuhas, there are what we call Upa-Vyuhas or smaller Vyuhas, and they are the Dvadasa Namas that we know, Keshava to Damodar, Keshava, Narayana, Madhava, Govinda, Vishnu. So from Vasudeva, we get Upa-Vyuhas of Keshava, Narayana, Madhava, and from Pradyumna, we get Govinda, Vishnu, Madhusudana, like that. So, and then there are also some other, there's a second Vyuha that comes, another set of Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and from them there's also 2 emanations each, bringing us up to 24 emanations, including all the Upa-Vyuhas from Keshava to Damodar, from Damodar through Vasudeva to Krishna. This is the Vishnu form. There's a Vishnu form called Krishna. Okay, so that's Vyuha. Karnika Vyuha, Vibhava. Vibhava means the different avatars that come to this material world at different time periods. And so Leela avatars, we would say. So we have the famous Das avatars. There might be some other avatars like Hayagriva, but we have, Rama, Narasimha, all these different avatars. Okay, so Karnika Vyuha Vibhava. Antaryamin is the super soul. As I said, God is everywhere. He's within every atom. He's also within your heart, specifically as what we call super soul in Sanskrit. That's called Paramatman or Antaryamin, the indwelling Supreme Lord. In the Upanishads, it says the body's like a green tree, and there are 2 green birds sitting in the tree. So we don't normally see the super soul. We don't see the soul directly, but we see what happens when the soul wants to do something and the super soul allows him to do it. So there's those 2 green birds in the green tree, according to the Upanishads, and that is a form of the Lord. So the Lord's within every atom. He's also specifically within the heart. In Sanskrit, the heart, the mind, basically means the same thing. So these are this is 4, Karnika Vyuha Vibhava Antaryamin, and the last one is called Archa. So we're getting to it. Archa means the Archa Avatara, or the incarnation of the Lord as the deity form. So the Archa Avatar is an expansion from, so these are all expansions from Karnika to Vyuha, Vyuha to Vibhava, Vibhava to Antaryamin, right? And Antaryamin to Archa. So the Archa is an expansion of the Antaryamin, like that. So that's going to be explained a little bit further on in the Bhagavatam and also in Haribhakti Vilas. So now, these 5 forms of God are also explained as being like different forms of water, different sources of water. The Acharyas have explained they're like different sources of water. The forms like the original personality of Godhead in his own abode, and the Vyuhas like that, they're like clouds in the sky. So a thirsty person cannot get water from the cloud in the sky. The cloud's up there in the sky, you can't reach it. So then we have when the different avatars come, we know that there are scheduled avatars they come at different times. Lord Krishna came at a certain time, Rama came at a certain time, Narasimha came at a certain time. So if you're there, you get their association. If you're not there, you missed out on their association. So they're compared to flash floods. That's also a form of water, but if you're thirsty, you can't wait around for a flash flood to come. If you're not there when the flood is coming, you're out of luck and you don't have the water. So the Karnika and Vyuha forms are unattainable because they're so far away or unreachable. The flash flood comes only at a certain time, the Vibhava avatars, like that. Then we have the two last ones, Antaryaman and Archa. Antaryaman, the yogis do incredible forms of tapasya and austerity and meditation to contact the super soul, to come in contact with the super soul. And so what they do is they through a lot of effort, they come in contact with the soul and the super soul by meditation. And this is a very difficult sort of thing, especially in this age. So that is compared to digging a well to get water. So if you're thirsty and you want to get water, sometimes you can dig a well and you can get water. So digging a well involves so much effort to find the water, because you know the water's down there somewhere, but there's a lot of effort to get it. So that is like doing meditation to try and reach the super soul. The last one is called Archa. The last one is the Archa avatar, the deity form of the Lord. The deity form of the Lord is compared to water in the palm of your hand. Water in the palm of your hand, you can immediately sip it and quench your thirst. So you can go into your puja room in your house, you can go to the temple and you can see the deity, you can be directly in front of the deity and you can directly contact the deity. This is a form of God which is very, very easy to contact. In Gaudiya Vaishnavism also they have another form, a sonic form called the holy name, right? That's of course there in all forms of Vaishnavism, but specifically we can talk about that's also a very easy way to contact the Lord through his sonic vibration, through his mantra form, like that. So, but now, particularly today, we're talking about the deity manifestation. So the Archa avatar. So here, Krishna is saying that there's different prescriptions, but he's giving a qualification. The person who should worship me, who should perform this worship, should be twice born. What does that mean, twice born? So Dvijatvam, or twice born, right, means that the person should have had not only the physical birth or seminal birth, but he should have had a second birth by a type of initiation. So there's different types of initiation, of course. There's Vedic initiation, which is the Upanayana samskara, which the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas take. And then there's the Vaishnava initiation, which is also a type of second birth. So in any case, the person should have had the second birth, which purifies the body, and the person is therefore qualified after second birth to perform the worship of the Lord. So let's carry on. Okay, so in verse number 9, Krishna says, the twice born person should worship me, his worshipful Lord, without duplicity, offering in loving devotion to my deity form and in the form of me, appearing on the ground in fire, in sun, in water, and within the worshipper's heart. So these are different places where the twice born person who's qualified to perform deity worship, the initiated person, right, should perform the worship of the Lord. I'm just going to turn off the chime, hopefully. Okay. All right. So, when do we worship? We worship the Lord in the fire when we do fire ceremonies. We worship the Lord upon the ground. There's some methods of doing this. Okay, in the sun and in the sun, this is done 3 times a day when we do the Sandhya Vandanam, whether the Vedic Sandhya Vandanam or the Vaishnava Sandhya Vandanam, where we do our prayers and chanting of different mantras, the Vedic Gayatri mantra and the Pancharatric mantras. And this is a worship of the Lord in the sun. Why? Because Lord Narayana, Lord Krishna, is there in the sun. Deya Sadasivati Mandalamadhyavarti Narayana Sarasi Jasana Sanivista. This, especially the Savitri Gayatri, is a solar prayer. It's a prayer to the Lord in the sun. And then worshiping in water. Okay, these are all a little bit more complicated. Then worshiping within the heart. Worshiping him in the heart is called Manasa Yaga. Manasa Yaga. Yaga means worship or sacrifice. And Manasa Yaga means meditation on the Lord within the heart. Again, that antaryamin, which we talked about, or super soul. So carrying on, text 10 explains that not only should the person be initiated, but they're, in order to do the particular deity worship. And now remember, we were talking about there's other forms of worship of God, like Harinam, where there might not be any of these regulations. But here, according to the Pancharatra Agamas, there are certain regulations. So now, once again, there are different types of people. We have the person who is completely pure, the person who's completely realized, who sees God everywhere and everything. And that person may not follow all these rules and regulations. Here we're talking about Vaidhi Bhakti. We're talking about Vaidhi Bhakti. Vaidhi means according to vidhis or according to rules and regulations. We're not talking about Raganuga Bhakti. We're not talking about the Bhakti where the person is completely pure. Okay? So, in the Pancharatra Agamas, it gives all these rules and regulations. So if you're following the Pancharatra Agamas, that's Vaidhi Bhakti. That's rules and regulations. What do the Goswamis say? Shruti, Shmiti, Puranadi, Pancharatra Vidim, Vina. Vina means without. Without the regulations of Shruti, Shmiti, Purana, and Pancharatra, then there's a disturbance in society. That's because, so even Raganuga Bhaktas, if they're going to perform worship outside of those things, they should probably do it in a solitary place or by themselves, because other people will see that and they will imitate that. And if they're not at the same standard, if they're not at the same level of realization as that person, they'll be committing an offense, because God will not reciprocate it with them in the same way, right? He reciprocates with his pure devotees in a slightly different way than other persons. The persons who are performing Vaidhi Bhakti, they should follow the rules and regulations of the scriptures, and that ensures, God says, the Lord says in the Shastras, that in the scriptures, that I will reciprocate with you if you do these things. And whereas he's bound by love for those persons who have extreme love for him, who have pure devotion to him, he's bound by their love to reciprocate with them in whatever way they approach him, right? So here we have some more rules and regulations. So again, for Vaidhi Bhakti, for the Vaidhi Bhakti sadhana, one should first purify his body by cleaning his teeth and bathing. Of course, this is all in detail going to be talked about in Hari Bhakti Vilas. This is just a summary that Lord Krishna gives in the Bhagavatam, so it's very easy to go through. So he should cleanse his body with earth and chanting different Vedic and Tantric mantras. Okay, so anyway, the takeaway from this particular verse is that the person has to not only purify his own consciousness internally, but he also has to be purified externally. We say, Apavitra pavitro va savavashtam gatopi va yasmarit pundarikaksham sabhaya abhyantara suchihi. The most important way to purify yourself is to remember the Supreme Lord, Pundarikaksha, because then we'll be purified within and without by that remembrance. That's a form of bhakti yoga. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. Smaranam. So remembering of God, that's a mantra, very famous sloka from Guru Purana, which explains that. So now we're coming to explain the deity process. The deity form of the Lord is said to appear in 8 varieties. So you'll find different texts like this explaining that the deity form, right? So we talked about Harinam, which is a mantric form or a sonic form of God. We talked about the different other forms of Karnika, Vyuha, Vibhava, Antaryamin, and Archa. These different 5 forms of God. These are eternal forms of God. We didn't talk about, there's some other forms also, like the Virata Rupa, which are considered, because they're made of material elements, they're considered to be non-eternal forms of God. We're not going to talk about those today. But we have here specifically we're talking about the Archa form, the deity form. So the deity form appears, and Krishna says, if you want to worship me in this deity form, he's saying, then you should worship me through these particular medium. So he says stone, wood, metal, earth, paint. Paint can also mean a picture, a photograph. Today we have different forms of paint called JPEGs or whatever it is. It's a form of God, and sand meaning some Earth and sand can mean like mud or sand. Even I believe Prabhupada, when they were making the fiberglass resin deities at the first American Transcendental Exhibition, Fate, he was saying this is sand. This is basically, it's a form made of type of earth, elements of earth. Okay, sand, the mind, the deity can be in the mind or the heart, and jewels. Jewel can also be worshipped as a deity. So these are different forms. These are different forms. So continuing on, this is interesting. So now Krishna says, Chala achala iti. Chala chala iti dvivida. There are two ways. There are two ways of establishing these forms that he just talked about. So not just vigrahas, not just murtis, not just physical forms of metal or stone or wood, but also the picture. There are two ways of establishing worship, of contacting me so that I will reciprocate with you. There are two ways. So these are called chala and achala, temporary or permanent. Temporary or permanent. We can establish, we can do installation, we can install a deity, either temporarily or permanently. This might be a little bit of a news for some people, because normally so many people are used to only the deity being installed permanently. Excuse me. But there are situations where the deity would be installed temporarily. Now, what is the criterion? The criterion comes from the words here. The words in Sanskrit are chala and achala. The word chala or chalati means to move. Achala is the opposite of that, fixed. Dhruva. Dhruva means fixed.
Yeah.
The main deity in a temple, the stone deity in a temple, is fixed. It is actually cemented to the altar, to the pindika, and it cannot be moved. Right? So the immovable deity is installed permanently. The movable deity is not installed permanently. It is installed temporarily. And what do we mean by temporarily? That'll be explained a little bit further on. Okay, so that deity which is temporarily established can optionally be sent forth and called forth and sent away. Okay, so the words here are, so asterium, that is not permanent, right? Steria means to be steady, or to be austere means not steady. So the temporary deity, right? And there are these different systems of calling the deity, which we call in Sanskrit avahanam, and sending forth the deity, which we call visarjanam. So these two rituals are performed with the temporary deity, not with the permanent deity. Let me just check my notes here. Okay, so we're up to text 14. Okay. All right, so we're going to go through here. So one should worship me in the deity form by offering most excellent paraphernalia. But a devotee completely free of material desire may worship me in whatever he is able to obtain. So again, we've got a reference here to somebody who's completely free from desire, somebody who's can do it in whatever way, and may even worship me within the heart with mental paraphernalia. Okay, so there's. Yeah, if somebody has a question, you can just break in, or I'm going to mute you. Yeah, you can unmute at any time, so I don't get background noise. That's fine. Okay, so now if we go on, 15, 17, 15, 16. So here's discussing about In worshipping temple deity, it would have a bathing and decoration as most pleasing offering. So doing abhishekam, alankaram of the deity, this is considered very, very pleasing to the deity. The deity traced on the sacred ground. The process of tattva vinyasa. Tattva vinyasa, nyasa means touching different parts of the deity to invoke the tattva, or the shakti or the power of the deity in that particular form. Oblations of sesame and barley soaked in ghee is the offering for the sacrificial fire, which we all know. Whereas worship consisting of upasana and arghya are preferred from the sun. We all know this from Sandhya Vandanam, which we do 3 times a day, that we offer arghya to the sun, Surya Arghya, and we also do the Gayatri Upastanam, where we chant the prayers to Krishna and the sun, like that. That's in Vedic Gayatri. It'll be slightly different in Vaishnava Sandhya. Then you can worship in the form of water by offering water itself. We see sometimes people are worshipping the Ganga, worshipping holy rivers by offering the water of the Ganga back to the Ganga. So there are some different systems for worshipping God in different or holy things which come in different forms. So now, let's see. Let's go up to 18. Okay, so now it's talking a little bit about the different things that are offered to the deity. Fragrant oil, incense, flowers, palatable food. These should be familiar to everybody. It's called Soda Supachara usually. There are up to 64 different items that can be offered, but normally we talk about 16 items. Asana, Swagata, Dhyana, Padya, Agachmaniya, Madhuparka, Shnana, Vastra, Alankara, Drupa, Deepa, Naivedya, Pushpa, Ganda, Namaskara. Visarjana can also be one of them. Okay, so we can have a Vahana and Visarjana. Okay, so now if we get up to, this is just talking about sitting down, this verse. This is talking about sitting down facing east on kusha grass and how you should do that when you're starting to worship the deity. Then he says you should sanctify various parts of your body by touching them and chanting mantras. Of course, we do this when we put on tilak, but there's also some other things called nyasas which are done. And this is also referring to the process of Bhuta Shuddhi. Bhuta Shuddhi is the purification of the material body and the elements in the material body to make the body pure enough to worship God, to worship the deity. And then he should do the same for the deity forms. So this is talking especially about the temporarily installed deity, that the person who's worshiping that temporarily installed deity should do a type of a vahanam, or calling forth of the deity from his heart, from the antaryaman in his heart, into the deity, and worship the deity like that. So this is done through different processes of nyasa. It can simply be done in a simple way, in a very informal way, by meditation. Just meditating that the Lord has come and residing in this form and is going to reciprocate with me in this form. So there's different ways of doing it. Some sampradayas do it some sects do it in a little bit more complicated way, and some people do it in a less complicated way. But it's the mentality which is more important. And then it talks about setting up a sacred pot for water for sprinkling. Here we're talking about sprinkling or purifying different articles that we're going to offer to the deity. So we're going to keep going. And we get to the worshipper has these 3 vessels, which he fills with these particular mantras. They are for Padya Agya Achmaniya, which means water for washing the feet, water for washing the hands or sprinkling over paraphernalia or the deity, and water for washing the mouth. Okay, so now we're going to go. Yep, background noise will be muted. Okay, so now, if you have a question, you can of course unmute at any time. The devotee conceives of the super soul, whose presence surcharges the devotee's body. This is verse 24. In the form of corresponding to his realization. Okay, so what does this mean? It means that the devotee, when he's meditating upon the super soul, if he's worshipping Krishna, he's going to meditate on Krishna. If he's worshipping Rama, he's going to meditate on Rama. If he's worshipping Narasimha, he's going to meditate on Narasimha. So in whatever form he wants to approach the Lord, whatever form externally he has in front of him of a deity, he's going to meditate upon that form within his heart. Thus, the devotee worships the Lord to his full capacity and becomes fully absorbed in him. By touching the various limbs of the deity with appropriate mantras, the devotee should invite the super soul in that form of Rama, Krishna, Narasimha, whatever, right, to join the deity's form, and then the devotee should worship me. So this is the process of avahanam. And this is for temporary deities, This is for movable deities, any deity which is movable. Now, we have two forms of movable deities. We have a movable deity which is in the house, where there is no fixed deity, perhaps. There's no deity which is stone deity, which is cemented to an altar and permanently installed. So there's a temporary deity there. There's a chalamurti, a movable deity. And so that deity we invoke from the super soul. Whereas the deity in the temple, we have a dhruva bearer or a mula bearer. Mula means root, dhruva means fixed. Again, the achala form, the permanently installed deity in the temple, which is cemented to the altar, the pindika, right? And that deity does not need to be invoked. Does not need to be invoked. We don't need to invoke that from our heart or from Vaikuntha or from the Surya Mandala or from the Shirabdi, the ocean of milk. These are different places where the Lord resides in different forms. And there are meditations for people to invoke the Lord's presence from those different places. But in the temple, we have a fixed deity which has been permanently installed, and there's no need to do that every day. Whereas with the movable deity, there is a need to do it, either formally or informally. We have to think like that. We have to meditate like that. So, in the temple, that would be a place where we have fixed deity there, right? Permanently installed deity. We also have movable deities in the temple that represent in the system of Pancharatra and Vaikhanasa, we have up to 5 or 6 different deities in a temple representing the same deity, different forms. It's come down basically to be 2. There's a big stone deity which is permanently installed, and then there's the movable deity which is used for abhishekam or used for bathing or taken on processions. And that is the Utsava Murti, or we can call it the Shnapana bearer also, because it's used for bathing, right? And that is a movable deity. So the essence of the deity, the Shakti of the deity, the power of the main deity, the permanently installed deity, is invoked from the main deity to the smaller deity by the pujari. So he doesn't need to invoke the Lord from Vaikuntha or Goloka or from Surya Mandala or from his heart. Or he doesn't have to call God from a far off distance. He has to simply say, I'm going to worship the main deity through this other deity, through this movable deity. So the invocation or the avahanam of a movable deity in a temple where there's a main deity is from the main deity. Whereas the invocation in the house is from the person's super soul, as it said here, or from some other place like Sri Vaikuntham or some other place. This is the form. Okay, so now there's one other type of deity which can be worshipped, and that is called a Swayam Vyakta or self-manifest deity. So sometimes in this world we find that there are deities of the Lord that have just come about by themselves. They have not been installed. They have not been carved by human beings. They have not been, they've just come about. Like it might be like Tirupati Balaji, or there might be some self-manifest deities. I believe there's 8 main temples in India where they have self-manifest deities. Included in that is also the form of the Salagrama or Dwarka Shila. We can say Govardhan Shila also. These are self-manifest deities. So the Shalagrama doesn't need this invocation. It doesn't need. There's no sending forth. There's no valediction either. There's no avahanam or visarjanam of a Shalagrama. Okay, so we'll come to that. That's there in Hari Bhakti Vilas. So it may also be. So anyway, here's a little bit more about the form of worship. This is more technical about the form of worship. Let me see in my in my notes what else I wanted. There's not much more I wanted to say from the Bhagavatam, actually. So we have 23. Yep, we went past that. 24, Pranapatista. Yeah. Yeah. 26, often Upachara is 28. Okay, so verse 27, 28 talks about worship of the Lord's paraphernalia, his devotees, his associates, which also accompany him whenever he comes in his different mantra form, his different murti form. And then 30 and 31. Anyway, it goes on and on and on and on. I think we can basically leave the Bhagavatam here until we get up until, let's see. Let's go right up to 47 here. So this is all describing different aspects of the system of worship. We don't need to go into that today. That's very complicated, each step, and we won't go into that. But once the deity worship is finished, once the actual puja is finished, then praying in this way, the devotee should respectfully place upon his head the remnants I offer to him. So the remnants of the items like tulsi leaves and flowers and garlands and prasadam we should touch to our head just to honor them. And then if the particular deity is meant to be sent away, in other words, if we're not worshipping a stone deity which is cemented down in the temple, a permanently installed deity, then we should do visarjana of the deity. This is stated here in the Bhagavatam, 11:27-47. And this should be performed, the deity once again, placing the light of the deity's presence. It says here, the light of the deity's presence. So in other words, meditating on the deity again, to going back into his heart as super soul. Okay, and this is what we call visarjanam. It's also called udvasanam. Udvasanam is also used when we do the Gayatri Upasthanam, when we do Sandhya Vandanam. In Sandhya Vandanam, we meditate on Gayatri Mantra. When we meditate on Gayatri Mantra, we pray to the Lord within the sun planet, and we also invoke Gayatri Devi, and we ask them to come, and then we ask them to go. And again, the next time we ask them to come and ask them to go. So in Sanskrit, normally people say yatasthanam patistapayami. You may go to your own place, and Chemaya, forgive me, Punaragamanaya cha, please come back next time. So this is deity worship is very much like when a guest comes to your house. The guest comes to your house, you offer all sorts of different things to the guest: water for washing his feet, water for washing his mouth, offer him drinks, offer him, if he wants to take a bath, he can take a bath, offer him food, offer him different things like that. If he wants to lie down and sleep, he can sleep like that. Once the visit is over, you say, thank you for coming and please come again. Basically, that's it. Okay, so this is a system of deity worship. Now, if we go to after this, the last couple of verses in the chapter, have got to do with, are like a palashruti, that if you do these things, then this will be the result. Palashruti means, pala means fruit, shruti means a description or a saying, explaining about the fruit of those actions. Of if we worship the deity in this way, what will be the result? This will be the result. Okay, so now I want to look at Hari Bhakti Vilas, because Hari Bhakti Vilas is going to go into a little bit more detail about these things. And what we're going to do is we're going to focus on those things which you're interested in and not everything, just those things. So if we go to Hari Bhakti Vilas, the first parts of Hari Bhakti Vilas, as everybody may know, right, is the necessity for a guru, taking initiation from a guru, and then this is the first two chapters, and the third chapter is getting up in the morning, taking a bath, doing things that you need to do in the morning, and then we get basically to chapter 5, and in which you're going to take the mantra which you've received from the guru in initiation, and you're going to use that mantra to worship the Lord. Now, of course, there are many mantras that you receive from the Guru, and you do japa of those mantras. You meditate on the meaning of those mantras. But also, excuse me, but also you use those mantras for worshipping the iconic form of the Lord, the deity form of the Lord. So that is described in Hari Bhakti Vilas from the 5th chapter to the 8th chapter. Okay, so if we look in the 5th chapter, there's a couple of things that are very interesting. 5th chapter, 443. Okay, so let's share that. Fifth chapter. There it is. Okay, so here we have an English translation of the 5th chapter. This does not have the commentary by Sanatana Goswami, but it has just the translation of the main text and things like that. So we have chapter 5, verse 443, where he says that, and this is many of the verses from Hari Bhakti Vilas are what we call pramanas or proofs coming from Shastra or scripture, so scriptural proofs, right, quoted from other scriptures. So a lot of times it'll say exactly where that verse is found, and Gopal Bhatta Goswami and Sanatana Goswami have read all of these scriptures, and they have brought in these quotes to explain things. So here is also another one from Padma Purana in Kartika Mahatmyam, which is Kartika is a holy month, and the glories of the month of Kartik. And there's a discussion between Yama and means Yamaraj and Dhumrakesh about certain things about Kartik, and in that they just so happen to pick up this topic of the different types of deities that are there. So he says, "O Prince, it's recommended that one worship Lord Vishnu or Krishna in his form as a deity. The deity is said to have 8 varieties: stone, wood, metal, earth, paint, sand, the mind, and jewels." So we can remember that all those things that we talked about, the movable and immovable deity, the temporary and permanent installation, we're referring to these forms. We're not talking about the sonic form, Harinam, for which there's very few rules and regulations. We're not talking about other forms like the Virata Rupa. We're talking about specifically about Pancharatric worship, which is mixed Vedic and Tantric worship. What forms the Lord agrees to appear in and reciprocate with us through. Okay, so then it says in the next one, it says, when the Shalagram Shila, and now everybody knows what a Shalagram Shila is, the definition is given here in Hari Bhakti Vilas that a stone from a particular holy river in Nepal and northern India called the Gandaki River, and there's a story in the Puranas about how it became to be, but there's a stone which has markings on it like the chakras of Vishnu. So it is a self-manifest form of Vishnu. There is no need to install it. All deities have to be installed, as we'll see later on, except this deity of Salagrama. Similarly, there is a stone which is a type of coral which exists in Dwarka, which is the city of Lord Krishna in Gujarat, right? Which also has these chakra markings on it, and they're completely natural markings, right, of the symbol of Vishnu, the chakra of Vishnu, and it can also be worshipped as Krishna or Vishnu. That is called a Dwarka Shila. So these are self-manifest deities. Similarly, in Vrindavan we have Govardhan Hill, and the stones from Govardhan Hill are worshipped also by Vaishnavas as being non-different from Lord Krishna. So these are self-manifest deities. Now, what's the difference? The difference is we don't have to invoke the deity from our heart or from Vaikuntha or from Goloka. We do not have to. It's a movable deity, right? It's a small stone. It's not cemented, right? It's not permanently installed because it's not installed at all. It's self-manifest, and therefore it's a form of the Lord which can just be worshipped without installation, whereas all other forms have to be installed before worship. So the Shalagram Shila is understood that Lord Krishna is directly worshipped. Vasudeva, the original spiritual master of the universe, eternally resides in the Shalagram Shila. So here's the statement of the Lord here directly from the Shastra that says that he is, by Yamaraj, one of the Mahajans, that the Lord resides permanently in the Shalagram Shila. And I'm just going to look at my notes here. So 44 and 45. Yeah. So, Lord Hari does not always reside in a deity made of gold, jewels, or stone, but he always resides in the Shalagram Shila. So, what we can understand from this is we might have a gold deity. You might have a gold deity. You might have a deity which is made of jewels, or a jewel which you worship as a deity, right? You might have a stone deity even. And the Lord doesn't always reside in there. He will not always reciprocate, but always he resides in the Shalagram Shila. So the point is, as we said, there's chala and achala, there's temporary and permanent installation of the deity, but there is no such thinking with Shalagram Shilas, Govardhan Shilas, Dwarka Shilas. They are always the Lord. Okay. So now if we go to 450, I just pick out very useful for our discussion. Therefore, everyone, whether a Brahmana, a woman, or a Sudra, should engage in the worship of the Supreme Lord in his form of Shalagram Shila after being duly initiated. Today we find there's a lot of people around, maybe they're not taking proper initiation, and they want to worship, and they even worship Shalagrams. They even worship these self-manifest Shalagrams, Govardhan Shilas. People go to Govardhan Hill and they just pick up the rock and they start worshiping it, and they're not even initiated. They haven't approached the spiritual master. They don't know what they're doing. So here it's stated that yes, anybody who's duly initiated can worship the Lord in this form. In the other forms also with proper training, right? About the rules and regulations and invoking and valedicting the Lord. But in the Shalagram Shila, there's no need for that, but he still needs to be an initiated person. So unlike there are some persons in India, some people in India say, no, Sudras cannot worship Shalagram Shila, women cannot worship Shalagram Shila. There's a whole discussion here by the Goswamis about that, and they completely deny that. They say, no, if you're a Vaishnava, you can worship. If you're a duly initiated Vaishnava, you can worship, even the Shalagram Shila. Some people are very offensive. They have a story where they say, Raghunath Das Goswami was given the Govardhan Shila of Chaitanya, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had a stone from Govardhan which has his thumbprint in it. He used to carry it around. He used to worship it in a Raganuga way by crying. He was crying. He would cry and the tears would wash it. And you can see it if you go to Vrindavan to Radha. Next to Radha Raman is, anyway, it's on the tip of my tongue. I can't remember it, but it's there in a temple in Vrindavan near Radha Raman, and you can see it. And he gave that to Raghunath Das Goswami. Now, some people very offensively they say, "Oh, Raghunath Das, because he wasn't a Brahmin, the word Das gives you the reason his name is Raghunath Das Goswami is the Das indicates that he was of a Sudra class, was born a Sudra, right? But of course, he's a great devotee, he's a pure devotee. That some offensive people in India will say, oh, Chaitanya only gave him a Govardhan Shila and didn't give him a Shalagram Shila. And they'll say, oh, the Shalagram Shila is only for Brahmins, not for women and not for Sudras. But here in Hari Bhakti Vilas, it says, no, even women and Sudras can worship Shalagram, right? If they're duly initiated. So this is a misconception and a completely offensive story that people tell sometimes in Vrindavan about Raghunath Das Goswami, that because he was a Sudra, Chaitanya only gave him a stone from Govardhan Hill and did not instruct him to worship a Shalagram, like Gopal Bhatta Goswami and Radha Raman has his deity, Radha Raman, which manifests from a Shalagram. He has actually 12 Shalagrams there. Okay, so that's one point. Now, 438. 438? 458? Must be 58. It must be 58. I wrote it down wrong. Or maybe it's 438. Okay. I'm back. 438. Okay. Ata Pratishta Nished. Nished means forbidden or prohibited. Installation of Shalagram Shila is prohibited, right? So it says here in chapter 5, verse 438, right? It is prohibited to install a Shalagram Shila. A learned devotee should first conduct very grand worship of the Shalagram Shila and then continue worshipping every day according to his ability. Right. So now going off to sixth chapter. Sixth chapter. We have the sixth chapter. No, we have to unshare. Find the sixth chapter. 17. Six. Where is six? Sorry, I just have to find 6. 5. And that's 17. Where is 6? 6. Okay. Okay, here we go. 6. This is, let's get back to chapter 6. Chapter 6. 22. Here we go. Okay, so here we have Ata Avahanadidi. Okay, the process of inviting or doing Avahanam. Now remember, Avahanam or calling the Lord to be present in the deity, to accept and to reciprocate with us, right? Because remember, the Lord's already there. He's within every atom. He's within everywhere. But specifically, we should meditate upon that specific form within our heart and call that particular form, that expansion of the super soul, to reside within the deity and to reciprocate with us. Now, we don't need to do that, of course, with a permanently installed deity, the immovable stone deity in the temple, or with a shalagram. But this is the process we do with the chalamurti, a murti which is movable, like that. One should then invite the Lord while sitting with legs crossed, because it's forbidden to worship the Lord sitting with one's knees touching the chest. One should invite him to appear at a suitable place. There is no need of invitation or immersion. The word immersion here it says na avahana visarjana. Visarjana means valediction. Now, when it says valediction, right, in the Bhagavatam in 11:27-47, it also uses udvasanam. It means immersion. Sometimes we see that what it talks about is 2 types of immersion. The Lord goes back within the devotee's heart. And then sometimes that deity form, if that deity form is very temporary, like made of clay or sand, that gets put into water. It gets destroyed or put into water. That's also a type of immersion. But that only happens after we, again, ask the Lord to reside within our heart. Okay, so this is the process of avahanam. Says, although the invitation and the immersion or the valediction are required for worship of the deity, invitation and immersion are not required for the worship of Shalagram Shila. The all-pervading Supreme Lord's presence is not as prominent in his various abodes, such as the sun or Vaikuntha, as it is in the Shalagram Shila. So this is a little bit of Shastric hyperbole. What they're doing is they're trying to emphasize for you that the Lord is directly there, always in the Shalagram Shila, or the self-manifest deity. So then the exact process of Vahana is given in Hari Bhakti Vilas in what is followed. Now, it's a little bit complicated. I'm not going to go through it today. If people want to understand about it, there are easier ways of doing this. Just a simple meditation that the Lord is entering the deity and accepting worship through, as was stated in the Bhagavatam, is enough. But in Hari Bhakti Vilas, they go into more technical details of how to do it, different ways of touching the deity's body, which was also described in the Bhagavatam, mantras and prayers to do, and different sannyasas, mantras and prayers, and also different mudras to show calling and asking him to stay for some time, and even allowing him to go back. So this is all very complex, and there's a complex way of doing it. There's a very simple way of doing it also. So we won't go through the complex, because we're just trying to touch the main doctrines here and the essential practices, and not look at very complicated processes. The process of Avahanam is therefore listed in 626 to 40, 626 to 40, and 646 to 47. Right? It explains the different upacharas or services that we offer to the deity, 46 to 47. 46 to 47, see? So here is the definition of the different services that are offered. So normally there are 16 services. There are mentioned here. So avahana, asana. Avahana means invoking the Lord. That is a service that we have to do, especially for the movable deity, for the temporarily installed deity. So avahana, asana. Asana means offering him a seat. Padya, offering water to wash the feet. Argya, offering water to wash the hands, water to wash the mouth. Achmaniya. Shnana, bath. Punachmaniya, again, washing the mouth. Vastra, clothing. Achmaniya, again, water for washing the mouth. Upavita, sacred thread. Again, water for washing the mouth. Ganda, pushpa, dupa, deepa, naivedya means sandalwood paste, flowers, incense, lamps, boga, offering of food, and then again, punachamaniya, water to wash his mouth again. And it also says here, very at the end here, you can read in the Sanskrit, it hasn't been translated very well into English. This should be followed by obeisances and prayers, and at last the deity can be immersed. But what it says here is after naivedyam punachamaniam, right? We have natva, which means dancing, stutva, which means singing or sankirtana or offering different prayers or stutis or stotras, right? And visarjana. Visarjana means, again, asking the Lord to, valedicting the Lord and asking him, thanking him and begging his forgiveness, surrendering unto him and asking him to, again, reside within our heart as super soul. To enter back into the heart, as it was stated in the Bhagavatam. So this is the system, again, given in a more elaborate way in Hari Bhakti Vilas. Okay, so from 640, 647, which gives those, there's also another list given down here, which includes Madhuparaka and a few other things. So these two lists are giving the definitions of the different services offered to deities. Now, if we go to the 8th chapter, which is the end, because remember, from 5 to 8 is the system of deity worship in Hari Bhakti Vilas, the system of daily deity worship. So 8 is the end, so therefore we should be able to see the Visarjana or the valediction should be there somewhere in the 8th chapter. So in fact, it is in the 8th chapter, which takes a while to get to. 8th chapter, right at the end, we'll get the valediction. After offer everything to the Lord, surrendering to the Lord, begging his forgiveness for any mistakes that we created, then there is the valediction of the Visarjana, again asking the Lord to leave the temporary form, the temporarily installed deity. 498 to 500, I believe it is 498 to 500. Right, here we go. So, Visarjanam tu chet karyam, talking about Visarjanam. If one is to valedict, or it says here immerse, they've translated it as immerse. It means immerse back into the heart. It could also mean that after immersing the Lord back into the heart, that the physical form, sometimes if it's made of clay or sand, gets discarded like that. Same thing if we have a pot, when we do a sacrifice, we have a pot with a coconut and we have different leaves. This is a temporary body for a different deity, for a deity to be invoked in. So we invoke the deity into the pot, we worship the deity in the pot, and at the end, we valedict the deity. We say, please go back to your own abode, and thank you very much, and beg their forgiveness. And then we can take the pot apart, we can wash the pot, the pot is no longer a deity. So again, it's another form of temporary deity, is a pot with mango leaves and a coconut. It represents a body of a deity. So if one has to immerse a deity, meaning if it's a chala murti, if it's a movable deity, you have to do Visarjanam, then he should take off all the cloth and ornaments and immerse the deity within one's heart after displaying the Visarjani mudra. Now there are different mudras in these are all more complicated things, but there's some Tristi and Sthiti mudras. There's some different mudras that are shown. That's too complicated. We'll talk about that some other time. Okay, so then he says, "Oh my Lord," this is the prayer. "Oh my Lord, I have worshipped you and Goddess Lakshmi," or we could say, "I've worshipped you, O Lord Krishna, and Goddess Radha," right, with devotion. "O husband of Kamala, please enter my heart and rest there." This is the prayer at the end of the puja. Okay, and then it says, after praying in this way, he should offer shoes to the Lord, right? Because if he has to go from the deity back to your heart, maybe he would require some shoes to come back. This is a very interesting mantra here. And then a sloka, and then immerse him, right, along with his associates, because he doesn't go by himself. He's also going to, wherever the Lord is, he's going to be surrounded by his divine consorts and his parivara, his associates and his devotees. He's going to be surrounded by them also. So you have to meditate like that while performing the appropriate pranayam, saranganyasa. These are different breathing exercises and touching different parts of the body of the deity and your own body, displaying the Visarjana mudra. Okay, so this is a more complicated system of Visarjana, but the essence is we just simply think, the Lord, please enter our heart again and be there, like that. Okay, so this is with movable deities, not with the immovable, permanently installed deity. Okay, so then later on in the 8th chapter, it talks about the size of deities. This is also an interesting thing in 8.18, which we don't need to look at right now. Basically, it talks about deities and it gives certain sizes in the form of angulas. Angulas is a measurement, the breadth of a finger, which is about 3/4 of an inch. 3/4 of an inch are about 2 centimeters if you're going in metric, right? And so 12 angulas, up to 12 angulas, up to about 9 inches is supposed to be for the house. And in the temple, it can be anywhere between 1 to 16 foot high deities. There can be very big deities in temples, but usually the deities in the house are smaller deities, right? So it also describes in Haribhakti Vilas 895. I won't show all these. I'm not going to show all these things. We'll just go through it quickly. 1895 in Haribhakti Vilas describes that the deity can also be painted. It can be a painting, or it can be a picture or a photograph. Of course, it doesn't say photograph in the Shastras because there were no cameras in those days, but it can be an image, a two-dimensional image, which can be either a photograph, a painting, or what we call a pratima, which would be a metal plate with like a bas-relief, you know, a two-dimensional type deity on there. Now, there's also a thing called a yantra, and also a thing called a mandala, in which we can also worship the deity. A mandala is a big geometrical diagram and represents the universe, and different deities can be worshipped on one mandala, whereas a yantra is for a specific deity, and normally it also has on Sanskrit, or in other scripts also, Devanagari script or some other scripts, it also will have the mantra of the deity. The mantra, remember, the mantra or the holy name of the deity is non-different from the deity. So when that is put on a metal plate, that can also be in a particular Shastric diagram, which is given in the scriptures, that can also be invoked and installed as a deity. Once again, it's a temporary deity because it's a movable deity, like that. So this is mentioned in Haribhakti Vilas 18, chapter 18, 95, and different types of deities. He says there can be deities also made of letters. So the letters on the yantra are also different types of deities. Now, it's continuing on. Chapter 18 is about how the deity is made, how the deity is carved, right? The different types of deities, and you know, installing the deity from the acharya's heart, and then we'll get to making of the different types of making of the stone deities. The permanent deities are made out of stone, and what kind of stone is the deity made out of, and what kind of stone is the pindika or the deity's altar, which the deity is cemented to. The permanent deity is cemented to the altar. So that deity has to be, the deity stone has to be a masculine type of stone. The altar has to be a feminine type of stone. And in between, there is a neuter type of stone. Now, these are all technical types of stones, which are explained in Haribhakti Vilas in the 18th Vilas. So I'm not going to go into that altogether, but basically there's a ceremony of sticking the deity there. And this we did in Germany with the Prahlad Narasimha deity in Germany many years ago, that there was a pindika, and inside there's inside there's a hole. There's a hole inside the granite base, and a square hole. Inside that there's another square piece of stone, which has 9 holes in it. You put 9 jewels, and you put a yantra, the yantra of the deity in copper, or it could be silver or gold, on top. And there's a ritual called Pita Ratnanyasa where you put that inside. Then the deity itself is placed at a certain time in the installation and cemented down. there's a piece from the deity sticking down into the hole to completely connect the deity to connect the masculine deity with the feminine Pidika and the neuter Brahmashila in the middle. And then it is cemented all around, and that is the system of permanent installation of the deity. Without that Pitaratanyas, according to Hari Bhakti Vilas, there's no permanent installation of a deity. Okay? So, that's all described in Hari Bhakti Vilas in the 19th Vilas. So, now if we go to the 19th Vilas, it talks about the prana pratishta of the deity. This is very complicated. There's few different systems that are given. So I'm not going to go through those now because that's all very complicated. But basically, it's divided into two. First of all, he explains how to install the permanent deity, the immovable deity. Then he explains how to install the movable deity. That's a little bit more simple. That's simpler. And then after that, he describes things that might happen after installation. If the deity worship isn't done correctly, if the ceremony, the installation isn't done correctly, if the deity which is permanently installed is moved or is desecrated in some way, what should be done? Or if the deity is broken. So this is a point that we wanted to get to. Sorry that it took so long. So I'm going to pull up Hari Bhakti Vilas, Vilas 19, and we're going to look at some of those quotes. Thank you very much for bearing with me up until this point. Okay. All right, so here we are, Hari Bhakti Vilas. Nope, that's what? Where is it? Here we are. This is, yeah. Okay, so 19. After the Prana Pratishta Brahmashila, 265, 625. Let's see, 625. Well, this is about the installation of the deity. Let's keep going. Two types, movable and immovable. 820. 820. 820. 820. Okay, so here we have, again, he up until 820 verses, he's explaining about the immovable deity. So this is very important and very long section. Then after that, at verse 820, he starts to explain about the movable deity, right? The movable deity, and again, he's talking about different types of deities, movable and immovable, permanent and temporary. So now we're going to go straight to the part about reinstallation, which starts at 1000. Yeah, somebody unmuted. Somebody has a question? Let me see. So let's go to 1000 here, 1000. You can see that deity installation is the longest chapter in Hari Bhakti Vilas. It's chapter 19. And it actually starts in chapter 18 because 18 is all about carving the deity and finding the right stones and making the deity. 19 is about installing the deity. 20 is about making a temple for that deity. But 19 is the longest. It's over 1,000 slokas, and so it's a very complicated situation. So starting at 1000, it says, if there's any fault in the performance of the installation ceremony, the purification rituals should again be executed. So if there's any fault or discrepancy during the installation ceremony, then according to the evidence of devotional literature, one should again purify the whole procedure. So you have to do the installation again if the installation isn't. This is specifically talking mostly about the installation of permanently installed deities. And then it says, if an immovable deity becomes polluted due to being worshipped for some ulterior motive, such as a success in performance of sinful activities, the touch of a dog eater being displaced, we can say dog eater, we can say even an uninitiated person, it might even say that here, an uninitiated person, being displaced or moved, that we're talking here about the immovable deity, being moved, right? Contact with a polluted object like wine right? There are many polluted objects. That's also described in Hari Bhakti Vilas. You can look it up. I'm not sure exactly where, but it's there in the first 10 Vilasas somewhere. Okay. Being burnt by contact of fire, having fallen onto the ground, being broken, being too old, having fallen into a river, or for instance, in Mayapur, having been flooded. Deities get flooded. So, being touched by sinful or abominable persons, being touched by the blood of anybody other than a Brahmana. Well, we can replace that by Vaisnava, let's say. Right? Then the deity must be reinstalled according to the rules and regulations of the Shastra. In addition, if possible, and remember, these are just the main slokas. There's also purports, which are not translated here, by Sanatana Goswami in his commentary, which we could go into. In addition, if possible, the deity's stand and altar should be changed. So this is talking about the immovable deity, the deity which is cemented to his stand. When there is a desecration of a deity by it being moved or desecrated in some way, or being flooded or fired or whatever, right? Then the deity is removed from that cement altar and cemented to the altar. The altar has to be discarded, and a new altar has to be made. A new pindika, a new feminine pindika, and a new brahmashila, and another pitaratnanyasa has to be done, and a reinstallation of the deity has to be performed. The spiritual master should reject the deity made of wood or marble if it is too old, or if it has lost a bodily limb. In such a case, a new deity should be installed according to the procedures described in Shastra. Okay, there are some exemptions from this. Okay, for instance, I've heard from several people in South India, and we have to find some scriptural references for this, that what we're talking about here is the breaking of a major limb of the deity. So if the deity's legs are broken, the deity's arms are broken, the deity's neck is broken, the deity's stomach is broken. These are major limbs. If, however, there is a small scratch on a finger, right? Of course, we always want to worship the Lord, and we want to offer the Lord a perfect body, as perfect as possible. During the process of installation, we actually do many ceremonies to the deity to purify the deity, even from any mistakes that might have happened during the carving by the carvers. Even if they haven't got the proportions of the deity correct, there is what we call Shilpadosha Shnana to get rid of those effects. And in fact, just like the Buddha Shuddhi that we go through every day when we do puja, we meditate on our own body becoming pure spiritually in aprakrita sharira, right? An aprakrita sharira means not a spiritual body, because we can only do worship in a spiritual body after Buddha Shuddhi, right? Similarly, when we do installation of the deity, whether it's a movable or immovable deity, we completely, by meditational process and another process, we completely destroy all of the material elements in the deity's body and then recreate them again, right? In a spiritual way, in a completely spiritual way, before we ask the Lord to inhabit that body. So we want the Lord to have a pure body, as pure as possible. And so we have ceremonies for doing that. But in case there's just a little scratch on the finger, or maybe if a finger might be broken and fixed or something like that, that may be okay. But in the case of a major limb of a deity, which is somehow affected, the deity has to be reinstalled. There has to be a new deity made, and the deity has to be reinstalled. Now, what about a shalagram? If you have a shalagram and you drop a shalagram and it breaks in two, you have two shalagrams. No such consideration for Swayam Vyaktamurtis. Self-manifest deities are always self-manifest deities. No matter how there are Nava Narasimhas in Ahobalam, there are 9 deities of Narasimha in Ahobalam. They're all self-manifest deities. Excuse me. And they've been worshipped for many thousands of years. So naturally, they've become deteriorated in some way like that. Those deities are still kept there in the inner sanctums. But because the deity has deteriorated, they have installed new deities in front of them, but they still keep the old deity there. Okay? So Even in Sri Rangam, if we go to the Tyre Sannidhi or the deity room for Lakshmi, there are two stone deities of Lakshmi. There's one older one and one newer one. So sometimes that's also appropriate if the deity self-manifest. There may be another reason. We have to look for some scriptural evidence of this, but some people say that if the deity is also worshipped, is a very famous deity which has been worshipped by a great acharya, right? Like Ramanuja, Madhva, Adi Shankara, whoever, whatever, Srila Prabhupada, let's say, right? That deity can also be considered like a Swayam Vyakta deity and can be preserved even if it has some major fault. This case came up in ISKCON with the deities in New Vrindavan of Radha Vrindavan Chandra. And apparently it went to the GBC, and apparently the GBC gave permission for those deities to be replaced. They made a set of deities to replace those deities with. I went there and I was going to replace those deities of old Radha Vrindavan Chandra with the new Radha Vrindavan Chandra, which are also still there and being worshipped. So I installed the new ones. And but at that time, it was thought, at the last minute, people thought, okay, we shouldn't do this because these deities were worshipped by Prabhupada. So even though there were major breaks in the deities, they continue to worship those deities. So that there may be an exemption in this situation. Similarly, we have the example of the deities in Hawaii. I'm presently in Hawaii. I spent many years in the Hawaii Honolulu temple, worshiping there and serving there, Panchatattva. And the Panchatattva deities originally there, of course, were made with paper mache by Govindadasi. Afterwards, they were replaced by these deities made of fiberglass resin. And because Hawaii is a very hot place, that fiberglass resin, anybody who knows that this type of resin with fiberglass dust in it, or some people call it Korean artificial marble, right, is not really a solid thing. Over time, it can, just like if we see some stained glass windows, sometimes after many hundreds of years, they seem to be moving, they seem to be drooping. So the deities also in the heat, and the same thing happened in Fiji. I was also head pujari in Krishna Kaliya temple in Lautoka, Fiji for some time. And so the same thing happened to the first American theistic exhibition, deities made of marble dust and resin in Fiji. The deity began to bend. The deity may be very fragile and break like that. So the deity has to be replaced. I had previously installed in California in the Three Rivers ISKCON farm with Rameshwar Maharaj. I had installed the Panchatattva there. Later, it was decided to take those Panchatattva deities on the closing of that farm and take them to Hawaii. I took them to Hawaii and I performed the reinstallation. It's actually what we call a Samprokshanam or a Kumbhabhishekam, where we transfer we merge the Shakti of those Panchatattva into those Panchatattva in Hawaii into those, and then the other ones could be repaired, or they could be worshipped by somebody else, or they could be discarded also and put into the ocean. So I've been involved in some other incidences where there are broken deities in ISKCON, and different, whatever the people in charge have decided to do, I've told them how to do it, and we perform the particular rituals and things like that. Here, it's very clear in the Shastra that we should normally, if the deity is broken, we should discard the old deity after first installing a new deity. By employing the Samhara Vidhi, the spiritual master should collect all the tattva, means the essence of the deity, the old deity. And after performing a fire sacrifice and consists of pouring 1,000 oblations, while chanting the Narasimha mantra, he should remove the deity from the altar. The acharya should remove the deity from the altar by pulling it with the help of a bull. Of course, we have cranes and we have different ways of removing the deity. What they do every 12 years in the major temples in India is they have a thing called Kumbhabhishekam or Samprokshanam, where the cementing the permanent deity in the temple is cracked off and is reapplied. And during that time, and renovation of the Vimanam and the Gopuram and different spires, the chakras and things like that go on. And during that time, the Shakti, or the essence or the tattva of the deity, is invoked into a kumbha, a pot, and that pot is worshipped in the yagashala, or the fire mandap, the place where the fire rituals are going on. During the time in which all these things go on in the temple, after the renovation of the deity and the renovation of the spire or the temple, then again, samprokshanam, the essence of the deity is again returned to the main deity or the permanently installed deity. So this is a case where we have a permanently installed deity, right? We don't have to call him or send him every day, right? But because there's some renovation going on, or because there was a broken deity, there has to be a reinstallation or a reconsecration. It happens also in the Jagannath Puri temple. Every once in a while, because they're wooden deities, the body of the deity deteriorates. There's an essence of the deity, which is in the chest of those deities, which is removed by the head pujari at midnight on the Rasa Purnima. And he's blindfolded, he wears gloves, and he takes and he puts in the new deities. So there are new deities made. And the old deities are put into a well. The body of the old deities are put into a well within the temple complex called Koila Vaikunta. Koila means well. And Vaikunta, it's Vaikunta well. They put it there because the old deities or broken deities are to be disposed of in water. They should be wrapped up and they should be disposed of in deep water, or in a river, or in an ocean, or in the case of Jagannath Puri, they do it in a well, like that. So of course, obviously, there are many Jagannath deities in ISKCON. Eventually, those deities will need to be replaced. Prabhupada also wrote some letters about there was a Subhadra deity which needed to be replaced. He told them how to replace it. Okay, so if the deity is made of metal or jewels, if the deity is made of wood, then it should be burned. If the deity is made of stone, then it can be immersed in deep water. If the deity is made of metal or jewels, then it should be immersed in the ocean. Otherwise, it may be immersed in any large body of water, such as a lake or river, or left in a dense forest. The spiritual master should wrap the old deity with cloth, place it in a vehicle, and take it either to the Ganges or the ocean, accompanied by the blowing of conchs, playing of drums, singing, dancing, and instrumental music. There, the spiritual master should recite the mantra, starting with Vishvaksena Atma Bijam, before immersing the old deity in the water. Of course, the visarjan of the deity, the essence of the deity, is invoked, what we call Shakti Akarshana. We are taking the Shakti Akarshana just like we do visarjana with the movable deity every day. That from the permanent deity has to be done. It has to be placed in a kumbha before it's invoked into the new deity, right? Or it can go back into the Acharya's heart, whatever it is. All of the precious gems that are kept underneath the deity's stand, right? Because the deity's stand is rejected, but that had precious gems, 9 gems and different things underneath it. Those are given to the priests as like a dakshina. For the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, they can also donate different things to the priest, to the spiritual master, and the priest, the acharya, who's doing that. The foremost of the demigods in this ceremony of reinstalling the deity, one should feed the devotees of Vishnu. So there should be a big reinstallation festival. There should be kirtan. There should be so many things, and at the end there has to be prasadam, and there has to be dakshina for the priest. So the festival can take either 5 or 7 days, and sufficient gifts should be given. The initial ceremony described in Hari Bhakti Vilasa is between 3 to 5 days for the actual installation ceremony. It can also be done much quicker way, in 1 day, especially with a movable deity. O foremost of kings, to counteract the fault that one has committed and that has been caused by a natural disturbance, one should immediately replace the old deity with a new one, possessing all the required characteristics. So if you have a deity and the deity needs to be replaced, you should replace it with exactly the same type of deity that you had before. If you have a clay deity, you should replace it with a clay deity. It'll explain it here. In such a case, one should not pause to consider whether what has happened is auspicious or inauspicious. One should simply reject the old deity stand that the deity was cemented to and replace it with a new one. one should be very careful that the deity that replaces the old deity is the same nature, same shape, same material, and is the same weight and height. The size, weight, shape, and material of the deity that is to replace the deity should be exactly the same. The old deity's stand should be rejected and the new stand should be installed. On the second or third day of the ceremony, the deity of Lord Hari should be installed on his stand. If one delays in installing the deity, right, this will be considered an offense, even if the deity installation is carried out with all the prescribed rules and regulations. So it should be done without delay. According to the rules and regulations of the scriptures, a clay deity or other similar deity should be immersed in water, right? If you have a clay deity and somehow got broken and needs to be reinstated, or you've done visarjana of that deity because it's a temporary deity, then it has to go to be immersed in water, and the new deity having the same features, weight, and height should be installed in its place. If the deity accidentally slips from one's hand and falls on the ground, if the deity is stolen, if that deity's been stolen, if the deity is disfigured due to some accident, then one who is learned should sit down in a solitary place and chant the Narasimha mantra and Bij mantra 100,000 times. If the deity is dropped on the ground, one should chant his mantra 10,000 times and worship the spiritual master with faith and devotion. If a deity slips from one's hands and falls to the ground from a height of 1 foot, now here's going to give a little bit more complicated, a little bit more detailed information, depending on how far you drop a deity. If you drop a deity 1 foot, it's this. If you drop it 2 feet, okay. But one should chant his mantra 15,000 times. These are prayashchittas. These are atonements that we have to do for committing these offenses. In deity worship, there are offenses, and there are ways of mitigating those offenses, right? Chanting the holy name is one of the best ways, of course. If, due to carelessness, one drops a deity from a height of 2 feet, you should chant his mantra 100,000 times and worship the assembled Vaishnavas. If a deity is accidentally dropped the height equal to one's own, which was about 6 feet or so, or if any part of the deity is broken, one should prepare a new deity and install him according to the procedures that were previously described. There is no doubt in this regard. 1/4 of the time that one spends chanting japa should be used to perform fire sacrifice, wherein one should offer sesame seeds mixed with ghee so that his offense will be nullified. Okay, so all those prescriptions before, wherever it says you have to do japa of a certain number of times, you have to take 1/4 of those number of times and you have to perform homa. And you have to offer ghee and sesame seeds with the same mantra. It's the basic mantra of the deity, usually the Mula mantra or the Gayatri mantra or both of the deity. If a deity is broken, cracked, burnt, too thin, or installed without following the proper procedures, touched by untouchable animals, or see, for instance, like a touchable animal would be like a cow. A cow is a touchable animal. And if a cow touches a deity, it's not a problem, right? Or an elephant. There are certain auspicious animals and inauspicious, but if a dog touches an animal, a deity, if a dog touches the deity, that's an inauspicious animal. If the deity slips from one's hands, has fallen in an impure place, has been worshipped by mantras meant for the demigods, or has been touched by an untouchable person normally means a non-Vaishnava, the Lord will not remain manifest. This ruling has been made by Lord Vishnu himself, who is all-pervading. Because a deity is broken, cracked, or missing a limb causes fear, one who is learned should reject it, as confirmed by the above-mentioned scriptural rulings. It is prescribed in the tantras that if a deity is broken or displaced from its original position, that one who is expert in the art of chanting mantras should pray to the deity while chanting appropriate mantras and slowly remove him from the altar. If the deity is very difficult to move, one can take the help of the sculptors or helpers, and if needed, a bull can pull the deity from the altar. O gentle one, if the deity is moved or stolen by a sinful person and yet is recovered in a perfect condition, the spiritual master, who is well conversant with the art of chanting mantras and the tantra or agamas, should carefully reinstall the deity, even if the deity is stolen and has gotten back in perfect condition. He needs to be reinstalled, right, by observing the above-mentioned procedures after conducting the necessary purification of the deity. The acharya who's conversant in mantras and tantras should reinstall a displaced deity that is still in perfect condition in his original place, as previously described, he should purify the Brahmashila, which was that rock that goes in between the male deity and the male stone deity. Even female deities are made of male stone. The altar is always made of female stone. In between is the Brahmashila, neuter stone. Right. By chanting suitable mantras and install the deity after performing the Adivas ceremony. Adivas is a type of purification that goes on, initial purification of the deity. Even a broken, cracked, very old, burnt, or limbless deity has all the required, even if a broken, very old, burnt, or limbless deity has all the required characteristics, it should be rejected. If a defective deity is made of wood or marble, it should be taken from the altar. According to the proper procedures, a wooden deity should be burnt and a marble deity should be immersed in water. Form, size, and weight replacing the old deity should be exactly the same. This is the ruling of the scriptures. One who is wise, I'm going to finish very quickly here. One who is wise should install a deity with the same mantras that were prescribed in the Vedic literature in relation to the former deity. So if the deity was installed in a particular way, it needs to be installed in the same way, right? According to the same shastras, same agamas. If for some reason one fails to perform puja for one day, he should worship the deity twice the next day. This is lapses in puja now we're talking about. If the puja is not performed for 3 days, a grand puja should be performed. If the puja is performed for a longer period, a grand abhishek and grand worship should be performed. If puja has not been done for more than a month, then according to some authorities, we're talking about not more than a month of a permanently installed deities. A movable deity or a temporarily installed deity can be kept and can be worshipped again after many years even. In Kanchipuram this year, they have a deity that they keep underwater, wooden deity, and they only bring it out once every 40 years. It's called Ativardhan. Bring it out once every 40 years, worship it for 48 days, and again it goes underwater for 40 years. So this is talking about permanently installed deities which must be worshipped every day, right? So if it's not performed for more than 1 month, then according to some authorities, the deity must be reinstalled. According to other authorities, a grand abhishek must be performed. Okay, so there's a bit of a controversy there between some of the authorities. In such a case, the deity should first be massaged with perfumed oil, and then a grand abhishek should be performed. The deity should first be bathed in eight pitchers of water or pots of water, and then 5 pitchers. This is all described before. The deity should be bathed in the 5 products of the cow, which I won't go into. Then the water with kusha grass, 108 pots of purified water while chanting the Mula Mantra. One should next place flowers in kusha grass. Okay, this is getting a little bit detailed here about how we should do the reinstallation. Right, now it says down here, my dear child, it is not proper to move even a clay deity because this creates fear in the minds of people. It is inauspicious to replace an old clay deity with a gold deity, with a golden deity. So again, it's saying that you should replace with the same type of deity. If one does this, it will bring famine, epidemics, countless miseries. If you think I've got a clay deity, it got old, now I'll put a gold deity there. That's not accepted in the scriptures. So here we have now the Mahatmyam, or the glories of renovating deities. The Puna Samskara means doing again the installation of the deities. O Brahmana, those who renovate an old deity or an old temple will be freed from all kinds of lamentation. Such persons are certainly great souls who are sinless and very intelligent. One who removes the deity of the Lord, of Lord Hari, obtains 10 times the merit of actually installing a new deity. Of this there's no doubt. So if you fix an old deity by removing it and replacing it with a new deity, that is considered 10 times greater than installing the original deity. Renovating an old well, and so on, is more beneficial than establishing a new one. Similarly, renovating an old deity is 100 times more beneficial than installing a new deity. Thus ends the 19th Vilas of Hari Bhakti Vilas. Okay, so that's all about deity installation. One more thing I just want to tell you from the beginning of this chapter, I just want to reiterate the point about Chala and Achala deities, which is something which is still not understood very well by a lot of people. Like that. This is the very beginning of Hari Bhakti Vilas 19. Whoops, there we are, 19. Beginning of 19. Here we go. Beginning of 19. Okay. Beginning of 19, we have right in the beginning. This is the procedure for installing a deity. The very first pramana that's given here, it says, only by formal installation does the Supreme Lord manifest himself as the deity. Therefore, one should carefully follow the procedure of installing the deity as outlined in the revealed scriptures. For a person who is completely transcendental, liberated, realized soul, pure devotee person, like the great acharyas, like Srila Prabhupada, they can call God to appear in the deity just by their love. For the rest of us who are performing Vaidhi Bhakti according to the rules and regulations of the scripture, the deity will only manifest. The deity will only manifest and will reciprocate with you only if you follow the rules and regulations of the scriptures, which I outlined in detail, but in some detail in this discussion, right? And that includes by formal installation. So you cannot just go down to Loy Bazaar, buy a deity, stick it on your coffee table, and start to worship it. You can do it, but the Lord says here that you should do formal installation of the deity, and only after that he'll reciprocate with you like that. The installation of my deity, who is the shelter of all living entities, should be performed. Right? Now, it says here also about the Chala and Achala deities. Lord Hari, the super soul of everyone, is the only worshipable Lord. His internal energy, Lakshmi Devi, or we can say with Krishna, Radha, Sri Radha, is referred to as Prakriti in the Shastra. Right? Prakriti means his energy. Lord Keshava is referred to as Purusha. So we have these two, Purusha and Prakriti. We have Shakti and the Shaktiman, Krishna, and Shakti, the supreme Shakti, the supreme energy, Radha, like that. Lakshmi will not remain in a place without the presence of Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu is everywhere, and Lakshmi will is always with him. But it says here that Lakshmi will not remain in a place without the presence of Vishnu. Similarly, Lord Hari will not remain in a place without the presence of Lakshmi. One should know that the deity of the Supreme Lord is Krishna, and his stand or altar is Lakshmi or Radha. The act of combining them and cementing them together is known, but according to the rules and regulations, is known as the Pratishta, as the Achala Pratishta, the permanent installation. Right? So without that, there's no permanent installation. If Lakshmi isn't there, if Radha isn't there, which means the altar, and they're not cemented together, there is no permanent residence of Krishna or of Krishna or Narayana within the Murti. Only the Achala Murti, the permanently installed deity, is permanently there. Otherwise, it's called a Chala Murti. It's a Chala Murti Pratishta. It's a movable deity Pratishta. It's a temporary deity Pratishta. And then you can worship him every day, but you have to do a Vahanam and Visarjanam. You have to call the deity either from your heart or from some other place, and you have to send the deity. Okay, so those are the quotes from Hari Bhakti Vilas, which I believe deal with the subject that you were interested in. Are there any questions, Maharaj? One other thing is, you mentioned in your email to me about the word avesha.
Yes.
The word avesha also, we have heard this word before in the term Shakti Avesha. Shakti Avesha. What does Shakti Avesha means? Avesha comes from the Sanskrit verb vishati, means to enter, to pervade. Lord Vishnu pervades everything, as I said in the very beginning. So avesha is pervasion. We could say when a person becomes occupied by some energy of God. So we have different Shakti Avesha avatars, like Narada is the Bhakti Avesha avatar, Shesha is the Dharana Avesha avatar. So these all these living beings, they have they have some form of energy from God, some special Shakti from God, some power from God given to them. They're all ordinary living beings, and they have some Shakti from God, and they're called Shakti Avesha avatars. Okay, now Avesha in itself, it just means pervasion. So I don't know exactly where this person you're quoting gets this term Avesh from, but Avesh simply means pervasion. It doesn't necessarily mean pervaded by the complete. If we say something is Swarupa Shakti Avesh, Swarupa Shakti Avesh means Lord Narasimha, Lord Krishna, Lord Rama, all these, there are different avatars. The deity of in the temple is Shakshat Bhagavan, is directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is Swarup Shakti Avesh. But somebody can have some Shakti, a little Shakti. Each one of us has a little Shakti, right? Given by God. We can do certain things, otherwise we couldn't do anything at all.
Right.
So in a sense, we're all Shakti Avesh avatars. We just have a little bit of Shakti, and the Supreme Lord has all the Shakti. He has the Supreme Shakti. So I don't know exactly in what context this person is using the word Avesh.
He's a scholar. You can hear me now, right?
I can hear you now.
Okay. I'll ask this particular devotee. I think I'd rather reserve his name until I have some dialogue with him.
I have no problem with that.
He said that this is, he didn't mention Hari Bhakti Vilas. He said Jiva Goswami says. And that's where the Avesha term, he said it 3 times. Jiva Goswami says. Okay. I'll find out what's the reference. And so I have a few questions from what we've been hearing. One of those questions is that lengthy description starting with the 19th Vilas, starting with 1004, going through 1015, those with immovable or achala deities. Yes?
Yes.
So,
but even a movable deity, if it's broken, it has to be replaced.
Okay, so the movable deity has to be replaced, from what I understood, depending upon, one of the considerations at least is depending upon the degree of damage, if it's a scratch or if it's a small thing.
But Hari Bhakti Vilas doesn't say that. Hari Bhakti Vilas says in any case, if there's some defect, even if it's touched by, defiled in some way, it has to be replaced, reinstalled. Even if the deity is got back in a perfect condition, it says, if the deity is stolen and it gotten back in a perfect condition, it has to be reinstalled. If it's touched by a non-Vaishnava,
so
you maybe reinstalling means the same deity if the deity is in perfect condition. Is the deity in perfect condition? That's the question.
Yeah, that was so. I think let me say back what I just received, which isn't exactly what you said, but what I received is someone has some deity in their home. They have an altar for a deity in their home. It's, that home deity size deity. Something happens to the altar, or something happens to the deity. So they have an option to repair the deity, assuming it's a modest damage to the altar or the deity, to repair the deity, and then again reinstall both the altar and the deity. That's an option for them.
Yeah, in the case of a movable deity, like in the house, a movable deity, a deity is not cemented down. The altar is not a problem. It's the deity which is a problem.
Well, this person was speaking to congregation people. Mm-hmm. And I don't even remember how the discussion came up, but it was like really authoritative. It wasn't speaking temple deity. He was speaking to congregation people. If your deity is damaged or the altar is damaged, the Avesha, it is to be understood, the Avesha has left the deity or the altar, and then they have to be a new deity and a new altar, and then the Avesha reinstated in the deity.
Okay. Once again, he's speaking to people who are congregational.
Yes.
They're all initiated Vaishnavas.
Yeah.
They're all initiated.
Well, I don't know if everybody on the call on this YouTube, thing, Zoom call.
Okay. Number one, if they're not initiated Vaishnavas, they have no qualification to worship the deity.
I got that part.
Number two, if they're initiated Vaishnavas, if they have deities at home, they have movable deities probably.
Yes.
There is no Avesh in the altar. Have they performed Pita Ratanyasa?
Probably not.
No, then there is no Avesha in the altar. Probably they put the deities on top of the TV or on top of the coffee table or somewhere. They have a cupboard. They have a cupboard. They have a deity room. They have a deity.
They invited a pujari from the temple to do deity installation in their home, and they did whatever they did. So they're installed. And as far as they're concerned, at least. Okay, that's a thumbs up. All right. So
good.
Then some time passes. This is home worship.
But that pujari install their altar?
No, they never do. I've never seen that.
Then where's the Avesh of the altar?
Well,
I mean, as I said in the beginning, Vishnu's everywhere. Krishna's everywhere. So Krishna's Avesh in my cupboard here. Krishna's Avesh in my chair here. Avesh is, what does he mean by Avesh? Krishna is all pervasive.
But so aside from what he said, an instruction that I can support hearing from you and Hari Bhakti Vilas under that authority, if someone has done deity installation by a pujari coming from the temple or wherever, performing installation of their deity in their home, some damage comes to the deity, here's what you need to do. You need to see that the damage was modest, the deity is again restored to as it was before, and invite the pujari to come again to your home and to do again the installation. Yes. Okay. There were a lot of people on the call. I don't know, there were not just one geographic location. There were a lot of people from all around the country. So I feel responsible because I was hearing to at least tell the person or the organizer of the call, because he's a congregation coordinator for a lot of people, and he has friends all over the country. So I wanted to have have clarity and speak to him privately and say, here's a concern, and I want to speak to the speaker, communicate with the speaker, and say, you said this, and because at the end of his speaking, he always quotes a verse in Sanskrit. He's a nice Brahmin, and says, if I said anything wrong, please correct me, and if I said anything right, the honor goes to my gurus.
Yep.
So, and he always invites, please correct me if I said something wrong. I'm not going to go with a paddle. I'm just going to say, I'd like to say to him, please, I'd like to see this reference about Avesha that Jiva Goswami said. And then I'd like to have a discussion with you what I understand from Hari Bhakti Vilas about temporary deities, which is for people in their homes. That doesn't apply to what goes on in the temple. It goes on to what goes on in their homes. This is my understanding. And how do you feel about that? And I'd like to make a correction, or have you make the correction to that audience, so the people that attended that call can understand.
So once again, Chala and Achala, movable and immovable deities, is the point. It's not necessarily the temple. We do have movable deities in the temple.
Yes.
Also.
Yes.
But we invoke them from the main deity, which should be permanently installed. Actually, a lot of the installations I've done in ISKCON, which are many, right, have been Chala Pratistas, even movable deity Pratista ceremonies, even though they were stone deities, because there was no fixing of the deity. And this is a problem also in ISKCON, is that they don't want you to fix the deity, because they say, well, we're in a rented house, we may have to move.
And they should
something like
in
this.
a rented house. Anyway, that's another story. How temples move the large deities.
We discussed it. It's there in Hari Bhakti Vilas at the end in those last.
So I've been spending this COVID time in Chicago, and the deities of Kishore Kishori were moved from where they were when Prabhupada installed them, and the other deities where Prabhupada installed them to their present place. And, under what authority that happened, I don't know. Tripurari Swami was responsible at that time for whatever happened. But, that's the the immovable or the deities that Prabhupada installed. Anyway, aside from temple deities, at least I'd like to have in my own heart and then come out of my mouth what people who are in our congregation should understand about their worship in their homes. Because what they heard is discard the deity,
right,
discard the altar, get a new
right.
altar, a new deity, and reinvest Avesha in both.
Right, but just to be clear again here, I have different groups of people that I'm teaching Vaishnava ritualism to and everything like that.
Yes.
Those groups, the group that I teach Vaishnava ritualism, the minimum standard is that they have to be initiated Vaishnavas. They have to be second initiated Vaishnavas. Yeah. I don't discuss these things with bhaktas, and I don't discuss these things with people who are not qualified.
And let me just share some appreciation for you. Maybe 15 or more years ago, maybe 20 years ago, I asked you a question about this first initiated devotee couple, and somehow they got Radha Krishna deities, and your number one emphasis was whatever it takes, they should hurry up and get second initiation.
I think I looked at those emails also in the last few days. I think, which I still keep that correspondence. I believe it had to do with also encouraging people who are perhaps from a different sampradaya also doing deity worship in ISKCON. And this has to
That was another conversation.
That was another conversation too. Yeah.
Yeah, two of them.
Yeah. So these are all circumstances. There are many circumstances that they're not the normal circumstances. And so the Acharya decides. The Acharya has to decide in the case of circumstances which are not normal. He can decide what he wants to do. But many times, what Prabhupada used to do when he was installing deities, there were not enough Brahmins. He would give people Brahman initiation. He would give people second initiation because he needed more people to install the deities, to worship the deities. So it's not up to me to do that.
Yes,
that's it's just up to me to say. It's just up to me to say that that's what it says in the scriptures, that initiated people should be worshiping deities, and non-initiated people should be trying to get initiated so they can worship deities if they want to worship deities.
Okay, I think there's only one more. Do you that the recollection?
One other thing I want to say about this other person who's giving this opinion like that. There are a lot of people, even they know Sanskrit or whatever, they may be great scholars, and they may also have read all of Jiva Goswami's works or whatever it is like that. If they don't have a deep knowledge of Pancharatra or a practical knowledge of Pancharatra, right? They may be a little bit unaware of the cultural and the actual details of what goes on. Back when Prabhupada was with us, he installed deities of Krishna Balaram in Vrindavan, and because the priests, nobody would accept the installation of the temple deities by just a bunch of Westerners, right? So he got Bhimashen Shastri and his party to install the deities, and Prabhupada didn't like those people so much. They weren't very devotional. They weren't proper Vaishnavas, but they were accepted by the Vrindavan community, so he got them to install the deities. You can read in Chaitanya Charitamrita where Prabhupada says, it was the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra which was more important.
Yes, I was in his room when he said it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the point. But later on, in 1976 in Janmashtami in Hyderabad, Mahamsa Swami asked Prabhupada, and you can look up the letter, can we get a leading Sri Vaishnava scholar to come into Purohit to come in to do the installation in Hyderabad? So Prabhupada agreed to that, And M.R. Sampat Kumar Bhattacharya came there. Yasodhananda and Pradyumna were both there. And he installed the deities. Prabhupada wrote another letter to him afterwards, thanking him for doing that. And he was asking Yasodhananda and Pradyumna, some of our men should learn from him how to do this in a devotional way, how to do it according to the Pancharatra Agamas. So I was the only person who went and studied with him because of that instruction. So now there are some people who have actually studied. There are some people who haven't studied with traditional people like that. There are people installing deities who haven't studied under anybody, and there's a lot of book learning going on. Okay, so I just have to say that somebody may get it right by reading the book or by reading the doctrines of deity worship explained by Jiva Goswami, and somebody might not get it right. That's all I have to say. So people should be careful by making assumptions when they read the works of the Goswamis, that they read a particular word and they have a particular idea of what it means in practice. Because I can't understand exactly how he's using this word avesha. If I could hear the context, then maybe I could understand what he's trying to say.
Well, I'll see if I can find it and send you the link, and you can listen. And that translation of Hari Bhakti Vilas
is also not the best. Is also not the best.
Sukrata's work, right?
No, that is by Bhumipati.
Bhumipati.
Yeah, that's not Krishkrata's.
Okay.
But you can be sure. You can be sure that I also have Bhakti Siddhantas and I have Hari Ras Shastris. I have all the different editions of Hari Bhakti Vilas that are available, and I've looked at the commentaries. And I'm not a deep Sanskrit scholar, okay. But as much as I know about the worship of the deity, and as much as I know about the commentaries and things like that, I've gone through whatever I can. And I'm also willing to learn from people if they want to tell me something more deep that they've understood from Jiva or from some other authority. I have no problem with that. Okay. I can only tell you up to my realization and my study. That's it.
Are you at liberty to send me a copy of Bhumipati's translation?
Yeah, definitely, sure. I'll just send you a link. You can download the whole thing.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah. And if you want the commentary, I can give it to you transliterated. You can get somebody to if there's any verse where you want to see what the commentary is on that, if there's some distinction, because Prabhupada does say we should understand Hari Bhakti Vilas with the commentary. Yeah. In many cases, the commentary doesn't change the meaning of the verse, but in some cases, it may give more detail.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, both. That's
so I have a one group of devotees that they just ask for Shastra quotes, and whatever they want, I can give them.
Okay. I think for now that I process things slowly. Some people are fast, and some people.
No, that's okay. Well, I'll put this up. I'll put this up on YouTube. You can watch the whole thing again. Stop it, rewind it. But the thing is that I think that there's a little bit of an epidemic these days of bhaktas worshipping shalagrams, and people who are uninitiated, somehow they want to worship the deity. And this may also come about because people number one have some maybe misconceptions about Guru Tattva, and therefore for a long time about some aspects of Guru Tattva don't want to go into that right now. And therefore they're a little hesitant to take initiation. Yeah. Some acharyas are hesitant to give initiation to people, or if they give first initiation, they're hesitant to give second initiation to people. So this all it makes it what we call a bottleneck effect. A lot of people join, and they don't know who to get initiated by. They just want to chant Hare Krishna. They also want to be able to worship deities, but they can't get initiated because of some reason. Either their guru won't initiate them, or they can't find a guru, or whatever. So this makes a bottleneck, and then people just do it. They just go to Govardhan Hill, grab a stone, and start worshiping it because that's what they've read in Prabhupada's books. So this is what happens when you have a problem. Guru Tattva is the very beginning of Hari Bhakti Vilas, first Vilas. If you get it wrong, it's the beginning of Chaitanya Charamrita, Adi Leela. If you get it wrong, then everything after that is wrong. Yeah. So this is just it's just a bottleneck effect from other problems. So if you get everything right, then everything flows nicely, and everybody will take initiation. Everybody will be qualified to do deity worship, and they'll do it they'll have that aspect covered, and they'll have their other aspects covered in proper proportion.
Do you there's the Padma Purana verse that says Sampradaya Vihina
Ye mantrastenesh palamataha. Vipalamataha, excuse me.
So the other half, Bhakti True Swami used to quote regularly that says, and if that happens, then you're to get initiation again.
No. A Vaishnava Padiste. Okay, I was on the GBC committee many years ago. Okay, right after '82, when there were some problems with the original gurus in ISKCON. Then the GBC empowered a committee of people. I believe Garuda, Hari Krishna Das, Gopi Puranadana. I was also on that committee to write answers to some questions by GBCs about reinitiation. At that time, reinitiation was going to be the craze. At that time, everybody was supposed to be reinitiated. That was the idea, right? Nowadays, not so much. Now it's like, maybe not.
No, but where my question is coming from is
the mantra comes from Hari Bhakti Vilas, I believe fourth Vilas. I can look it up for you. All right, A Vaishnava Padistena Mantrena Niyamam Vrajet Punascha Vidina. I forget the last line. Okay, but Punascha Vidina means again with proper vidi. Vidi means again you must do the ritual of initiation. If you take initiation into a mantra from a non-Vaishnava, a Vaishnava, then you must again take that initiation of that mantra.
What if they're not, this particular situation, it's not on the main topic that I wrote to you about. It's something that came up subsequently.
That's fine.
Somebody received...
Have you read my
No. Let me just say the question. I
wrote a paper on this.
Someone that I met recently said they received initiation from a line of Nityananda, and they don't know if the disciplic succession is a bona fide disciplic succession or not. And I asked,
what does that mean to you?
What does it mean to me?
Yeah.
Well, if one receives diksha not from sampradaya, nishpala, that's what it means to me.
Okay, so what does that mean, though? What is a bona fide sampradaya?
Well, that's the bona fide sampradaya means I've in the past 48 hours I read some of the references where Prabhupada speaks about it, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur speaks about it, and so there's apa sampradayas that may give mantra. But it's not a bona fide disciplic succession because it's upper sampradaya. So Nityananda Vamsa is in that category. It's an upper sampradaya. So is that mantra which this person received going to give them the fruit or not? That's the question. And
okay.
If so, then
okay, this person wants to take initiation again. Is that the point?
They're not sure what's right. They don't want.
First of all, you can take initiation into another mantra. There's no prohibition to that. When we say there can be only one Diksha mantra, Diksha Guru, there can be only one Diksha Guru for every mantra. Prabhupada took sannyas Diksha from Keshav Maharaj.
Yeah.
He took sannyas mantra from Keshav Maharaj. Keshav Maharaj is his mantra guru. He's his Diksha sannyas mantra guru.
Yes.
So he has two Diksha Gurus. He has his Bhaktisiddhanta is his Diksha Guru, and Keshav Maharaj is also his sannyas mantra Diksha Guru. If somebody wants to take initiation into another mantra, that is acceptable. But if somebody wants to take initiation into the same mantra, the example is given in Chaitanya Bhagavat. There's a story about Gadadhar, of Panchatattva, Gadadhar.
I know the story.
Yeah, and he was a disciple of Pundarik Vidyanidhi.
Yes, I know.
Right, and Pundarik Vidyanidhi had some questionable achar. He didn't appear to be a Vaishnava straight off. You know, maybe
Yes,
some people say he was smoking a hookah. Maybe he was living a lavish lifestyle. You know, so initially Gadadhar thought he was just a Vishayi. He was an enjoyer. He was not a. He was just a karmi.
I know the history.
So then Gadadhar took initiation from him after realizing that he was a pure devotee. So he took initiation from him, but later on he approached Mahaprabhu and asked him, I forgot my mantra. Now, how anybody forgets their mantra, I don't know, but he says, I forgot my mantra. Can you tell it to me again? And Mahaprabhu said, no, you have to go back to your guru and get it. If you take the same mantra, if I get initiated into Hare Krishna mantra or whatever mantra it is from a person, from a Vaishnava, and then that person who's a Vaishnava, I go to another person and say, you know, I need that mantra again. Somebody has to initiate me in that mantra again because I don't have faith in that, in getting that mantra from that other Vaishnava. That's a guru aparad. Right? That's an aparad to the guru. Prabhupada didn't do an aparad to his guru by taking sannyas mantra from Keshav Maharaj. He took a different mantra. He saw Bhakti Siddhanta in Keshav Maharaj. Right? He said, Bhakti Siddhanta is not here, so I go to my senior godbrother and I accept that mantra.
I got it.
Yeah, so you know, but now if somebody has complete faith in Nityananda Vamsa, if they have faith in that parampara, if they're getting the same mantra, Nityananda Vamsa, what mantras are they giving? Probably Gopal mantra. Gopal mantra is the basic mantra of Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. It's main mantra mentioned in Hari Bhakti Vilas, the procedures from Kramadipika. So Gopal mantra, if he's receiving Gopal mantra, can he take initiation into Gopal mantra again? Then he has to decide whether he took initiation from an Avaishnava or a Vaishnava. The question is the definition of what Avaishnava means. So to me, and in context, it seems to me that a Vaishnava is very simple. A person, somebody will say, no, a fallen Vaishnava is a Vaishnava. I don't agree. There can be low, medium, high Vaishnavas. Just because somebody's a low Vaishnava doesn't mean he's not a Vaishnava. To me, that person is also a Vaishnava. In Nectar of Instruction, we say the first verse that somebody can make his disciples all over the world if he's got completely controlled senses. But there are other people also who have, Prabhupada speaks about that even a Kanistadhikari and a Madhyamadhikari might also have disciples. They might also have disciples. So what happens if somebody says, my guru is a Kanistadhikari, he gave me a mantra, but I know he's a Kanistadhikari, so I want to take that mantra again from somebody else. That's an offense. Because that person is a Vaishnava. He may be a Kanistadhikari, but he's a Vaishnava. The mantra specifically says a Vaishnava, a person who is not a Vaishnava. Now, what is the definition given in Hari Bhakti Vilas of Vaishnava? Well, who's a Vaishnava? The definition of a Vaishnava in Hari Bhakti Vilas is somebody who is initiated by another Vaishnava and who worships Lord Vishnu. So if the person is initiated by another Vaishnava, he's a Vaishnava. And if he worships Lord Vishnu, he's a Vaishnava. So somebody might say, well, that person doesn't worship Vishnu. He doesn't worship Krishna anymore. He left worshiping Krishna. Is he still considered a Vaishnava? I took initiation from him when he was a Vaishnava. Now I'm saying he's not a Vaishnava anymore? Is he a Vaishnava or isn't he a Vaishnava? That the person getting initiated has to decide. I've had many people ask me this question. Should I get initiated, reinitiated or not reinitiated? I say to them, you have to decide. The person you took initiation from, was he a Vaishnava or was he not a Vaishnava? And there's a big problem if you start saying all these people that were authorized by the leaders of ISKCON to be gurus, somehow or other they weren't Vaishnavas. Then you have a big problem. Then people say we can't understand who is a Vaishnava, who's not a Vaishnava. Like with Pundarik Vidyanidhi.
Problem saying, but what you're saying, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, but that wasn't my question. But that's okay. It's a nice education. It's not the question.
The thing is, Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Jiva Goswami seem to also indicate that a person who's fallen from Vaishnava, they will say that a Vaishnava may mean a person who is fallen from Vaishnava behavior.
Okay.
So you have to decide. You have to decide for yourself. If you feel that the first guru is not a Vaishnava, then the scripture said, then you must take initiation again. If you feel the first person was a Vaishnava, then you must not take initiation again into the same mantra.
Even if that Vaishnava is coming in a Upasampradaya line.
Again, what does Upasampradaya mean?
Well, again, Sampradaya means taking knowledge in an unbroken manner through disciplic.
No. Okay, the word parampara means one after another. The word Sampradaya means tradition. Nityananda Vamsa is a tradition.
Okay.
You may not like that tradition.
It's an Upasampradaya, but it's still a Sampradaya because it has a tradition.
Are there not Vaishnavacharyas that are accepted in ISKCON? Gaudiya Vaishnavacharyas who are accepted in ISKCON, right? Who may come in some of these things. What about Bhaktivinoda Thakur? Where was he initiated into? Nityananda Vamsa. Am I right? His guru is Bipin Bihari Goswami. I have his guru parampara. I have argued with people in ISKCON. I have friends in ISKCON who have written. I can show you a whole discussion, and the topic of discussion in the email is Bhaktivinoda has a dead mantra. That's the topic. Do you agree or not?
Because it came from Nityananda Vamsa.
Exactly.
Okay, that's on topic like anything.
That's on topic like anything. I've already had this discussion. If you say Bhaktivinoda Thakur, if you say that he is initiated in an Upasampradaya, in a Sahajya Sampradaya or something like that, if you say that his initiation is not correct, then where's your parampara? You have somebody in your parampara who is not a bona fide. Does that make your parampara bona fide? See, it's a can of worms when you start opening it.
Yeah, no, this is helpful. This I very helpful without going into detail.
Also, let me just say something. I've talked to many people about this point before. If you start looking, so don't get me wrong, I'm an equal opportunity offender here. Okay, okay. So I can, if you want me to point out defects in any parampara, Sri Vaishnava, Madhva, Gaudiya, whatever, I can show you. If you want to find defects in a parampara, you can find them. Okay, you can find defects in any parampara you like. If you have faith in that parampara, then you follow it. But even this whole look. Number one, Sampradaya Vihinam Ye Mantraste Vipalamataha. That quote, those whole set of quotes cannot be found in any prominent edition. Cannot be found in any printed edition or any manuscript edition that I know of Padma Purana.
Really?
Show me. I did the Matsya project. I microfilmed 1.5 million manuscript pages of Vaishnava literature in India in 1980s to 83.
It's not there.
There's a lot. I didn't say it's not there. I said I never saw it. So
okay.
when somebody quotes something, they say normally when somebody quotes something to me, I go and I get the book and I look it up and it's there. If it's not there, I say, hey, it's not there. And then they say, oh, you need another edition. Just recently, Tripurari said to me, look at this, is said in Gopaltapani Upanishad. I said, not in my version. And he said, well, it's in Jagadananda's version. Then I had to look into it and said, okay, there's a different reading. There's a printed book in North India that says this, and the critical edition, which I'm using from the RDO library, says something else. So I said, your point is accepted according to your reading. But I don't see it in my reading, my critical edition. So once again, that this is why Shastra Pramana. So this whole thing, but let me also say, let's say that we have a Padma Purana with those verses in it, right? What does the verse say? The verse says all these sampradayas arose from Purushottama. They arose from Puri. Did the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya arise from Puri? Sorry, didn't arise from Puri, right? The state, if one statement in the Pramana is incorrect, why should we accept the other statements?
Yeah, that's the other half of that verse.
Right. So the thing is, there's this whole theory of Chari Sampradaya. There are 4 bona fide Sampradayas. Even though the Sampradayas have perhaps radically different doctrines on different philosophies, right? Even though you've got, plus you've got Gaudiya Sampradaya that says we're Brahma Madhva Gaudiyas. First of all, Madhvas don't start their Sampradaya with Brahma. Second of all, the Madhvas preach Dvaita. They don't preach Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva, right? You get this all the time. Devotees go to Udupi and they try to tell the Madhvas they're better Madhvas than them, that they don't know what Madhva said, that Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva is the... Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes to Udupi and he argues with them and says, I don't see anything good about your Sampradaya except that you accept the deity. And he says, your Sampradaya. He doesn't say, you have messed up our Sampradaya. He says, I don't accept your Sampradaya. And historically, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was there in South India during the lifetime of his great-great-great-grand guru. How is that? If in the Madhva Sampradaya, there's actually no initiation. There's no initiation like there is in Sri Vaishnavism, Nimbarka, and in Gaudiya. We have initiation. We have Vaishnava initiation. They are Varnashramis. Their only initiation is the father gives the son Gayatri mantra, that's Upanayanam. People take sannyas, that's their initiations. They're Varnashramis. Okay, sometimes they give mantras to people, right? That's fine. They call it mantra upadesh, but there's no initiation. There's no pancha samskara. There's no tapa pundra tatonama mantra yagas to panchamaha in Madhva. There isn't, right? So if they have no Vaishnava initiation, and a person who's a sannyasi gives only sannyas to another person. In Madhva Sampradaya, the sannyasis, they took initiation from Ananda Tirtha. They're Tirthas. They give initiation to a guy. That next person will be a Tirtha. They initiate one person only to take over their mud. That's it. Like that. So, and that person who is their junior Swami can give sannyas to somebody else only after the senior Swami dies. If the great-great-great-grand guru of Chaitanya was still alive even after Chaitanya left this planet, how could there be a Guru Parampara coming from that person? Historically not possible.
What to speak of?
So that look, pick any parampara, I'll tell you the problems with it, okay? So if you want to criticize a parampara, it's easy. But if you have faith in that parampara, if you have faith in the persons of that parampara, you follow it like that. So going back to Gaudiya, there's many different branches of Gaudiya Sampradaya. Most of them, the traditional ones come from the parivaras, right? Of the Panchatattva and the different parivaras, right? And then the non-traditional ones, like Gaudiya Math, have non-traditional paramparas. The parampara of Bhakti Vinod is a Diksha parampara. It's a seminal Diksha parampara, something which Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada didn't like, right? And goes down through Lalit Prasad to some other people, whatever it is. The parampara of Bhaktisiddhanta is called Bhagavat parampara by the Gaudiya Math because it's supposed to be somewhat, it's like a Shiksha Diksha hybrid. It's like a Shiksha Diksha hybrid, right?
Yes.
Everybody's not initiated by everybody else. Everybody didn't even maybe meet everybody else, but everybody's following the same philosophy, right? Everybody's following the same Shiksha. It's a Shiksha parampara, right? Until you get to Lord Chaitanya. Before Lord Chaitanya, it's a bunch of madhvas. You can't say it's a Shiksha parampara back before that. So there's a lot of people have tried to prove the connection between Madhva and Gaudiya Sampradaya. Why? Because of this one verse that Baldev pulls out of the air and says there's 4 bona fide Sampradayas only and you have to belong to one of them to be bona fide. But if we throw that out the window and say, we don't care about that because there's so many problems with that, then there can be many paramparas. And this is the actual fact in India. When people go to India, there are many paramparas, and we have to judge each parampara by the teachings and by the people who are teaching it. That's all. So we can understand the purity of the parampara by the effect that the people who are preaching the philosophy of that parampara and how they are living that teachings, we can understand by Palena Parishiyate. That's all. So we can see by ISKCON the effect of ISKCON. We can see the effect of the Gaudiya Math. So therefore we have to accept that they have some potency. If we accept that only the Diksha Parampara has potency, then how would ISKCON have so much potency? How did the Gaudiya Math have so much potency? How did Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta and Bhaktivinoda, how did they have so much potency if only Diksha Parampara is true? No. And Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita gives the definition of parampara. He says, when is a parampara broken? He says, when that knowledge was broken, it had to be respoken. I spoke to the sun god spoke to, right? And after some time it was broken. It's the knowledge which is important in the Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita definition of Guru Parampara, it's the knowledge which is handed down. So that knowledge can be handed down by a book. I write a book and I give it to somebody, or I put it in a library and 100 years later somebody reads that book. He's in my parampara, my Shiksha Parampara. So that's more important. That is more important than Diksha Parampara.
You've over answered my question. And your time is now 8:30 in the morning.
Correct.
And my time is 1:30 in the afternoon.
Okay.
And I'm going to have to excuse myself because I have some other obligations.
Yeah. But you know, the whole thing, I wasn't expecting this whole thing about, about Guru Parampara, but specifically we can talk about different Guru Paramparas. If there's a specific question about a specific Guru Parampara.
No, you've answered my question. You've answered my question.
Okay.
Specific to this person in this situation, and then beyond that, I'm happy. It's nice to be a question of happy, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, this is, look, everything I've said is my opinion, and if you watch this again and you see anything that I'm saying, if you say, oh, I don't feel confident of what he's saying there, or I don't accept that, or maybe he has some Shastra quote to explain that, just ask and I'll give you the Shastra behind it. Yeah. Okay. This whole discussion about 4 Vaishnava Sampradayas are the only ones. Is Gaudiya a 5th Sampradaya? My personal opinion is Gaudiya is a Gupta Sampradaya, just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a Gupta avatar. He's a hidden avatar. He's a secret avatar. And that's fantastic. And he has a secret parampara. And therefore you can accept the 4 Vaishnava Sampradaya thing. And you can also accept Chaitanya has his own Sampradaya. And you can also accept the Chinta Beta Beta Tattva is bona fide because he can have his own thing because he's a Gupta avatar. He has a special case. So I think that's the best way out of it because, so many people down through the ages, I've seen so many people trying to prove that they're Madhvas. Look, you are either really bad Madhvas, right? Or the Madhvas are totally off and they don't know what Madhvacharya said. And some of my best friends are Madhvas, in South India. I've known Madhvas. I know all the big, B.N.K. Sharma, I knew B.N.K. Sharma. He was a great friend of ISKCON. He loved Prabhupada. Right? Banaji Govindacharya, Pejwa Swami, all these people love ISKCON, okay? At the same time, if you ask them, are they Madhvas? Are they Madhvas? They're not Madhvas. They don't accept us as Madhvas. We're not Madhvas. We should stop trying to be bad Madhvas. We should just try to be good Gaudiyas.
Okay, I've got to excuse myself. You're very enthusiastic and very helpful, very kind.
Yeah, no, once again, anything that I've said, anybody who hears this, anything that I said, right? If you question it, if I'm wrong or in any case, I beg my forgiveness. I beg your forgiveness. And please send me the question. I will, I can back up what I say from history, from scripture, from whatever you like. If you still have faith in some other opinion, that's fine, and I have no problem with that. You're still a Vaishnava, and great, no problem.
I'll tap you on the shoulder if I'm uncomfortable. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for all your time. You can see why I didn't want to answer this in an
Yeah.
email. Yeah.
Yeah. Haribol.
Haribol. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.